of Geyer is a typical German Jewish name. Geyer is a typical. Richard Wagner grew up in the Jewish quarter of Leipzig. So he was called Richard Geyer. And even as we know by the brilliant study of Robert Newman, who wrote a brilliant Wagner biography, he was playing around in the Jewish quarter with Jewish children. So when Wagner was in school, one mocked, and he was a little tiny man. As we know, we have seen the picture before, you remember. And part of this kind of anti-Semitic Christian also caricatures, you might know, was a strong nose. So coming from the Jewish quarter of Leipzig, being called Richard Geyer till he was 8 years old, and then even being mocked, certainly hurt this very little, yes, I'm talking about the boy, Richard Wagner, in the school, even the Thomas, famous Thomas school, and certainly had, as we know later on, quite an impact of him. So he changed his name from Geyer to Wagner again. So I mean, he took the name of Wagner, also not to be in a certain way any longer taken, let's say, mocked, that people should stop mocking on him. So let's see, please, the next one, which is very interesting. I'm not inventing up here, inventing any kind of stories. This is a caricature of a very famous magazine, from Vienna, from 1867, referring, I will translate it for you, how, Ruf Wendeles, this cover player in Leipzig, transformed step by step to Richard Wagner, which is actually, there were rumors then also in German society about Geyer. So even Friedrich Nietzsche, made this a public discussion, Geyer Adler, no? So he was talking, of course, in a way which was very irritating, done publicly. So we see this, referring to this kind of discussion on Wagner's really origins. Even we're talking about 1867, a long time after he was born, 1813. So this really should know that it was certainly a public discussion even. Now we should see the next slide. Why do I show you the three other very important composers? And you might, of course, know Felix Mendelssohn, and altogether also Giacomo Meyerbeer. Here again, it is extremely important, and you see in the middle, this picture we have seen before. So, in reference to these outstanding, Meyerbeer, Giacomo Meyerbeer was not Richard Wagner, but Giacomo Meyerbeer was the most important opera composer of the 19th century. He was internationally recognized. He was a much more important figure than Wagner was in the 1840s and 30s and 40s. So regarding him, these two very important composers with Jewish origin, we know that Giacomo Meyerbeer never has converted to Christianity. We know also the reason why that Mendelssohn later on converted to Protestantism. But these, let's say, very outstanding, important composers both assisted and helped Richard Wagner enormously. It's known that Meyerbeer did even provide, Wagner even helped him financially. He was equally, let's say, generously, also he was supported by Mendelssohn, as we know. So now I think it's very interesting to know that these two other composers, Meyerbeer and Mendelssohn, had even an impact on him as a young composer. I'm talking about Wagner's early work, which is not so known, it's Rienzi, which is, I can say even, it's a bad Meyerbeer. That means Wagner imitated strongly the work of let's say, at that time much more important Meyerbeer, and as we know, and then with Mendelssohn, we have even a theme, the so-called Dresdner Amen, which Mendelssohn himself used 50 years before Wagner used it in the Parsifal. So there are even musical references to these two extremely important composers. And these details you have to know, because one even mocked again on Wagner. So we said, okay, Wagner came out possibly from the Jewish environment in Leipzig, might be, has been a Jew, and now he's even again influenced. So Robert Schumann, the very important, also German romantic composer, then even said, oh, everything is in a certain way, he is imitating the two. And so wounds, in this case, were opened up again because of the very early experience growing up in the Jewish quarter. So let's see here the next one, please. In a rather provocative but clear way, I have made my little collage. Richard Wagner himself, having been also compared all the time with these other two, Wagner, as we know, had very clear ideas about, and this I will talk now about it, about music and the arts as redemption for the world. And Wagner saw himself created, starting especially with this low entry, the message, the artist will save the world. And I, Richard Wagner, of course, he identified completely also with this figure, I will save the world. Now, I'm saying that very clearly in connection, the discussion also of the idea of redemption, as we know, is for both religions very essential. Also, has been always a very critical and vulnerable point. And Wagner, in that sense, of course, follows up in his way a long tradition of Christian anti-Semitic also history. And I'm now coming in this kind of development, especially with Lohengrin, from Lohengrin on, I'm coming directly to the next slide, the next projection we will see. As we know, Wagner failed as a revolutionary in 1848-49. He had to escape from Germany. He was a refugee that also in Zurich, in Switzerland, and here, being merely without a real existence, he started to develop very radical ideas. The revolution failed. Also, he was certainly not a, let's say, radical left revolutionary as he normally is presented. Wagner was an opportunist. He was a bystander who hoped to have better conditions for himself. So being in exile, he always was looking for someone who might create his bad situation. And so with this historical situation, with the condition, his private conditions, as being might be, the question of the father is not clear. We know that also we have the case of self-hatred, by not having a clear identity about yourself. So Wagner wrote this writing. And I think you really should know, because this is the first public anti-Semitic writing Wagner wrote. We see here the first version of September 1850. And you should know some essential points. I'm not going in too much in details. What is in a certain way shocking about this is especially his brutal attack against Jewish, what he repeats on against Jews are the standard Christian prejudices, like the Jew is dominating the world by money, so the Jew is really also patronizing also the idea of God. These are commonplaces, but let's concentrate now especially on the discussion regarding culture and the role of Jews in the culture, in music. And one of, let's say, the most, I think, appalling parts is Wagner's attacks against the synagogal music. As we know, it has a, some millennium tradition of a richest and the most important, I think also,